Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for TX CPA's Facebook Live Friday program. I'm Jody Ann Ray with the Texas Society of CPAs, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of our week to join us. So today we're going to jump into a really interesting topic, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Professor Daniel Shulcross with Baylor University. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Jody Ann. Really excited to be here and just to discuss this topic with you.
We are too. Thank you so much. So if you're just joining us, please feel free to let us know that you're watching us this morning and where across the state you are tuning in from. We always like to know who we're spending a little bit of our time with. And also, as we go through our conversation today, if you have some questions or thoughts that you'd like to share, please go ahead and put that in the chat as well. And we'd love to have you participate in the conversation with us. So before we jump into the conversation with Daniel this morning, just going to have one news item that we wanted to particularly share with you. Hopefully you've seen this. On Tuesday of this week, the IRS did announce annual inflation adjustments for over 60 tax provisions for the 23 tax year, including increases in the standard deduction for married couples and single individuals. And all of the details are in Rev Proc 2238. So some of those that are included are listed on your screen. So you can find that on our website, as well as in this week's Viewpoint if you have not had a chance to see that and get those details yet. So let's tell you a little bit more about Professor Shulcross. So of course, Professor Shulcross is a CPA. He's also a clinical associate professor and director of accounting internships and career development at Baylor University. He's a CPA with experience as an auditor at a global public accounting firm and corporate accountant and financial planning and analysis professional for a Fortune 500 company. So Professor Shulcross, we would love for you to fill in a little bit of gaps there and tell us a little bit about you. Everyone always likes to know about what your journey to CPA was and maybe how you ended up moving from some of your other career positions to education.
Yeah, awesome. So I earned my CPA in 2010, shortly after graduating. I'm a Baylor Bear, so now I'm back at my alma mater, which is really fun. And so after I graduated, I went and worked as an external auditor for Deloitte, spent some time there, and then transitioned to Southwest Airlines, where I worked in their fixed assets groups, did some corporate accounting, and then was a business consultant in their financial planning and analysis group. And so those experiences were something that Baylor valued when they hired me on to help students just from a career discovery perspective, specifically accounting students, as well as helping them just grow from a professional development perspective, and ultimately decide, hey, where do I want to go work? And so my job just involves working with students from a career management perspective, as well as just interacting with a lot of different employers that come and hire our students. And so I also teach accounting as well. So I teach managerial accounting. I teach a survey of accounting class. I also have about a little over 100 students every year that are off on internships and receive course credit for that. So I administer that as well. So yeah, it's just a great role. I feel like every time I wake up in the morning, I have to pinch myself, quite honestly, because it's really fun working with students in the classroom, and then also trying to help them as best they can land their dream jobs.
That is so fabulous. So tell us a little bit maybe about what were some of your early influences that led you to pursue and achieve the CPA license.
Yeah, so like I said, I graduated from Baylor, and so I will just say accounting was challenging, but it somewhat came naturally to me. And so that initially got me interested in accounting and said, okay, I want to pursue an accounting degree. And after I pursued that accounting degree or said, okay, I'm an accounting major, I realized that the employer that I was interning with and then later transitioned into full-time with them, they valued that CPA, and a lot of other students were kind of going in similar roles. And I'll just say that Baylor really helped prepare for being able to take the CPA and ultimately do well on it. And so really because it was valued is something that I thought, okay, this is something I need to consider doing. And so really thankful that I did that because it's just been something where I think people in the business world tend to view, okay, does this person know their stuff? Oh, they have a CPA, then yes, they know their stuff. So it's kind of almost a rite of passage.
Very good. Yep, totally makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story. So you teach managerial and the overview class and oversee internships. You also teach some career development or professional development classes as well.
That's right. I guess I completely forgot to mention that, but yes, every Thursday I meet with our accounting majors, and we have about 185 students in that
Okay.
class, and we bring in professionals, a lot of guest speakers. We also run recruiting out of that class, but it is all about career discovery, career management, preparing students for interviews, networking, and so yes, through that class, I interact with students and help them just from that career management perspective.
Well, and I guess I should, in full disclosure, say I do have maybe a little bit more insight into what you're covering in that class a little bit, as my daughter is one of your students. And so it's been fun to kind of use her as a little bit of a focus group to see what experience some of the students are receiving as accounting majors at Baylor. So that's been fun too.
Yeah, and we've had I think as many as 50 employers already come through just interacting with our students through that class. And so that connection with your daughter, we made that Melinda when I connected with her just 2 days ago. That was kind of fun to see that and realize
Fun to
that
make the
connection.
connection.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My daughter posted on her like TikTok story or something, like when they start talking about your mom's work in class. It was funny. So let's jump right into this a little bit because pipeline initiatives is a huge priority for the society. It always has been. It's something that we spend a lot of time and resource in. So our relationships and partnerships with universities across Texas is so very important to us. So any of the way that we can support what's happening on campus in the classroom with students and candidates, we absolutely 100% want to do that. So we're always trying to give our members, as well as in our outreach awareness efforts, as much information as possible about what's happening right now and what people need to know about and how employers can respond and be best prepared, for example, to meet with students, to provide them great experiences. So one of the things that you were kind enough to do for us is in our latest edition of today's CPA magazine, where we really have a focus on the CPA pipeline. You authored a piece for us, really focusing on what meaningful internship opportunities look like and maybe how that's shifting as well. So we'd love to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on that you explored in that article. And so can you just first start talking about the role that internships play in the hiring process?
Yeah, so I should mention that I have been at Baylor now in this role for over 7 years. And so I've
Okay.
interacted with a lot of students that have gone off on internships. Like I
Mhm.
said, it averages more than 100 every year of students that go and do internships for course credit. And so when they come back, they provide a lot of feedback to me. But also I follow these students on full-time placement. Where do they get placed after they graduate or when they're before graduation? And so I would say majority of our students, where they choose to start full-time, they've previously interned there. That's typically what we see. And so that's not just public accounting. That also can be the Chick-fil-A's of the world, the um, other industry type roles as well, ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, a lot of oil and gas operations too that come and recruit here. So those internships, I would just say, are kind of the lifeblood into campus talent acquisition. And so that's a lot of what drove me to write this piece was, okay, if that's the case, well, you want to make sure that you're developing an internship program that resonates with students so they want to come back and sign full time with you. And so, from just my experiences with students, I hit on a lot of different points that just from informal and formal feedback that they have provided to me what's important to them whenever they're deciding, yes, I love this internship. I'm excited to start full time, which most of the students are in that boat. But then there's also a percentage of students that say, wow, I didn't really enjoy that internship. I know I don't want to work there. And so if you're an employer, you probably don't want to be on that side where students are saying, I don't necessarily want to work there.
But it's an
S-
opportunity to see if it really is a great fit for you personally, not only with the work, but with the culture of the company as well.
100%. And we encourage our students to do multiple internships. And we also try to encourage them to consider doing internships that are not a similar role for both internships and not a similar company as well. So we really try in our program to get students experience in industry as well as in public accounting, because that really enables them to do exactly, Jody Ann, what you were mentioning. And so if you want me to just touch on some of the things that I've
Perfect.
found just from feedback from previous interns, I think number one, and I hit on it right away in the article, was students just want to feel connected on their
Mhm.
internship. And that's been something that once COVID hit, a lot of things went more virtual, and it's hard, or it's easier for an intern to just kind of get lost during the internship. And so having people regularly interacting with the interns, and whether it be informal or formal channels, is something that I've seen. When interns comes back, they say, oh yeah, that was great. But I also see a lot of the negative responses of, I honestly didn't really get to see many people, and I was not given too much work. And so I almost felt like, do they even care that I'm here? A lot of people are on vacation. And so just making sure that those people continue to feel connected is definitely number one. And I know it can be more challenging sometimes in those hybrid and virtual environments. And I will say that students coming now out of that COVID environment, because they lived in it so much, they are really eager to be in person as well. And I think that touches on feeling connected
Well, would you
again.
say, going into this year, let's say we're coming out of COVID, would you say that, there are still virtual internships happening this year, or would you say that there's been a return this year to in person?
Yeah, everything's now moving towards in person, but just due to the nature of a lot of the internships that accounting students go on, which are public accounting internships, and they might be compliance driven or they're just client service, they get on teams where that supervisor on that team may decide we're going to do things virtually,
Right.
whereas a different supervisor on an audit engagement may say, well, I want to be in person with my team on client site. So it really differs, but I would say in general it's more hybrid. But yes, there's more of a movement to in person. I'll also say that just recruiting, for example, at Baylor for internships, uh, the firms that moved to in person sooner than other firms did better
Okay.
recruiting students. And so I think that's also a telltale sign of just, wanting that in person connection.
So the first point is really about connection. And just have you seen a shift in the percentage of internships that your students are going on that are public accounting versus industry? You said you try to make sure that they have some exposure to both, but has there been a shift over the years as to what that balance looks like in the overall internships?
Yeah, I will say that I haven't gotten hard data on exactly like how many students have gone to. Industry is a little bit more difficult to track because of the timing of recruiting that takes place for industry, whereas public accounting, all the public accounting firms all recruit at the same time. They provide offers to students around the same time, whereas an industry company, let's just take this upcoming summer, they might recruit a student this fall, or they could be a month before the summer starts and they're like, we need an intern, and they'll go ahead and start. So it's hard to gauge or gather that information around industry, who's all getting industry internships. But I'll say from a full-time perspective, it's appeared to be pretty consistent on where students are going public accounting versus industry. And for us, on the accounting side, and I can just speak to Baylor. A lot of our students start in public accounting. Majority of them do, And so I would say between 75 and 80% do start in public accounting. And that's students that are graduating out of our advanced degree program combined with our BBA in accounting. So
Very good. So the second point that you really focus on is what are the learning and growth opportunities that are available to a student during an internship?
yeah, so I think it's really important to think about the type of work that you're giving interns. They definitely want meaningful work. Also, whenever they're doing the work, providing them feedback on the work that they're performing, that's just allows them to grow. And also working just on a diverse type of things, the different engagements that they're working on. So maybe not the same exact thing, even if it is meaningful, it needs to maybe be different. And then I think if as best as employers can do, try to make students aware of the purpose behind their work, which ultimately helps motivate them, but they love that. So if they're auditing something, I think it's easy for interns to just be like, okay, I got to get this task done. Well, how does this fit into the bigger picture? That makes it even more meaningful and brings it a little bit more to life for the student. Because if you're, I'm going to use audit as an example. I could use tax. I can use industry, working for a company that maybe provides a good or service. Just thinking about that bigger picture is something that's really important.
Such a really good point that you make there. It's important for them to see that shift that the profession is making, really from, providing good data and assurance to really moving towards, how is this company going to use this data moving forward? And how are we going to provide them guidance into improvements and opportunities that they have in the future?
Mm. Yeah, that's good. I think as an accountant, you play a vital role in just really helping the public and helping organizations for sure continue to make decisions that are best for them. And so thinking of that bigger picture in the little tasks that you're doing, I think is helpful.
So you also talked about in the article about, the balance in the amount of work that they're given, and also the importance of competitive pay. I think when I was in school, internships were seen as free labor. And that's not the role that they play in today's environment.
Well, and because you see employers using that internship as a pipeline into full-time hiring, they pay well on the internship. They pay their interns as if they're first year employees. And so, yes, I would say too, just to keep in mind, you mentioned, before getting to the pay, about just the amount of work you provide the interns. I think there's a balance there because I'll have interns come back and say, "Wow, I worked so much. That was overwhelming. It was great that I got overtime pay and such, but I don't know if I can do 90 hours a week all the time." And then you have interns that come and they say, wow, I was there 40 hours a week, but I really only had 20 hours of work to do. And so there's a balance for sure of giving those interns enough work, but also not overwhelming them. Because, I had a student, great example is she just came back and she said, hey, I finished the first season of New Girl that week, which was good because I had nothing to do. And so that's kind of where you want to avoid. And I also think, just getting back to the connection piece, I think if those interns were feeling connected and getting updates, maybe, or just getting check-ins with workers there, I think that would have been helpful.
So what is are there in-semester internships that are happening in addition to, let's say, summer or between semester internships? And what does the difference in that look like?
Yeah, so our graduate program is designed for students to take an internship for course credit in the spring or the summer. They could even potentially do it in the fall, but what we see is most students are taking it in the spring or the summer. And then they'll take some maybe mini-master courses when they're not on their internship to be able to still stay as a full-time student.
Okay, that makes sense. So one of the questions that I had for you is, what are you seeing as far as the mix of employers, and what can small and mid-sized employers do to make themselves competitive on campus? How should they show up and what should they be focusing on so that they're taking advantage of that recruiting pipeline as well?
Yeah, so we get a really variety of employers coming to campus. We'll get banks. We get a lot of different client service type employers, public accounting employers, and so I will say when we're talking maybe about middle market public accounting firms, I would say, um, you know, the type of clients that those middle market firms tend to serve allows interns and folks that are maybe completing client service to see things from start to finish, because maybe that client's not as big. And so just informing candidates about the value in that, I think, is really, really helpful, and really being strategic about, okay, these students, they actually do value maybe that type of work experience. They also value maybe working in a smaller office. And so then when you can identify those students, really focusing your efforts on there, so you're not wasting your efforts maybe on students that are immediately just saying, this is where I'm headed. No one's going to change my mind. Because I would say that it appears that there are students that will just come in and say, this is, I want to go Big Four, for example.
Mhm.
And so I also, as Baylor, we try as best we can to tell students, hey, explore all your options, because you never know where you might fit. And so I just would encourage those maybe smaller offices or middle market firms to really focus in on efforts in building deep relationships with a smaller group of students after they identify, okay, these students actually do appear to be interested.
So, as a parent, it's appeared to me that the timing and intensity of recruiting has really changed dramatically. And so, I wonder if you could comment on what you've seen from your perspective in that regard.
Yeah, so a lot of companies are recruiting students earlier and earlier,
Mhm.
before students even have any idea of potentially what they even want to major in. And so there's advantages and disadvantages of that, um, because if a student receives an offer for an internship at a pretty young age, oftentimes those employers are thinking, okay, we've got this person hooked for a full-time job that's going to happen 4 years later. And so while the experience is great, and I think students need to take advantage of that, um, I also, my fear is that students aren't exploring all their opportunities that are available to them because they just get locked into maybe one employer. So it's something where there's definitely a dance there. And what we try to do at Baylor is we have companies that agree, okay, this is the timing of when we're going to recruit students, which allows students to really say, okay, oh, here's my options in this semester. It's not just one employer, all the employers are kind of recruiting around that same timeline. So it really allows the student to say, okay, uh, look at offers all at the same time, to then make a decision, because that decision is kind of a big decision, because oftentimes it leads to the full-time job.
Yeah, it could set, the trajectory of your career path by making those early on decisions. And I think that's a little bit different than what we've seen 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, as students are looking at opportunities, what are you hearing from them are the key drivers in making a decision about, a job offer or an internship? What's most important to them? What do they value most, and what do employers need to do to kind of put their best foot forward?
Oh, yeah, that is such a good question. Because we did survey students about this particular topic, and the number one item that popped up was culture. And really, it was around, do I fit with this employer? And so, through just different conversations, is this a place that I feel like I fit, quite honestly. And so that was the key indicator of whether they go to one employer over another. And so I think it's crucial, if you are recruiting students and on the internships, to make sure you trust the people that are interacting with interns and interacting with students on campus. And really, they are folks that embody that culture that you want as a firm or as a company, because the students definitely and the interns take note of a good company culture versus one that's maybe not. So I have more stories on those that from students that I could give examples of, but I'm not sure we have time for
Okay, but we're going to follow up on that. We're going to remember that and do a follow up on that because I think that could be, really, really fascinating because that's a conversation that we're having with employers now. And, just kind of looking at what is your culture? How do you define it? How is it perceived by somebody that's new to your environment? Very, very important. So switching gears just a bit, how do you see what are some barriers that you think exist right now for students who may be considering or want to pursue a CPA license?
Yeah, so this is a really good question, because we have students that just pursue a BBA in accounting,
Mm-hmm.
and they are maybe wanting to start with an employer that really values the CPA, but with a BBA in accounting, you don't have enough hours to be able to sit for the CPA. And that additional year of schooling can be pretty expensive for
Mm-hmm.
students, because they also want to get to work and start making money and maybe paying off some student debt that they have.
Yep.
So I would just say the number of hours can be challenging for students. Just partially because of the financial piece that we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think that's one of the biggest barriers for that I see with students is trying to figure out how to manage that, as well as that kind of leads into, because education is really expensive, those starting salaries also can matter. And so that's something that I've seen this last year, some starting salaries going up for accounting students, but we our hope is that trend continues.
Two really excellent points. Just wanted to remind everybody that the legislature in Texas meets again beginning in January, and we will be introducing legislation this year to allow students in Texas to start sitting for the exam at 120 hours versus waiting to complete 150 hours. And we're hoping that that helps with some of this difficulty that they have with balancing needing to get to work, meet their obligations, all those things. So 47 other jurisdictions across the United States allow that now. So we're hoping to be in that group as well. So one more that I wanted to ask you about, and we've seen lots of data coming in about rising salaries, particularly this year. And so our data sources aren't necessarily going to reflect that yet because it's going to take a little bit of catch up. But exactly a great point there. We want to see that trend continue. We need to make sure that people that are coming into the accounting field have competitive salaries to other opportunities that they might be presented or pursue. So one more I wanted to ask you, and what do you say, Baylor's kind of position is on kind of promoting or encouraging students to become a CPA? We know that, only about 40% of students that graduate with an accounting degree end up sitting for the exam and pursuing licensure. So just wanted to get your thoughts on, what are some of the things that, Baylor thinks about in helping guide students?
Yeah, so actually next week we're going to be talking about certifications, and we have Becker coming in and discussing the CPA, the CMA. And so one thing that we try to do is we just want to make students aware once they become an accounting major and even before, hey, this is a certification that you can potentially pursue, and here are the benefits of pursuing these different certifications. So we want students to pursue these different opportunities, different jobs, different certifications, if they're right for them. And so we
Mhm.
provide that information to them so then they can go on and make a decision. But a big driver for students picking the CPA, at least from Baylor, is the type of employers that come to Baylor and express that the value that the CPA brings. I mentioned a lot of students start with a CPA firm, and so a lot of students also start in that compliance role, audit and tax, and so they can only get promoted so high if they have a CPA or not. And typically a firm wants to know, are you pursuing the CPA? Even if you're not getting the 5-year degree, which allows you to be CPA eligible. And so because they're hearing it from that side, it encourages students to pursue the CPA. And so, like I said, at Baylor, we try to just encourage students to be aware of the different opportunities. That awareness, I think, is the first step. And then we just let the students decide, what do you want to do? And a lot of students do end up pursuing the CPA, and I think it's because they know about it, and then they can understand some of the benefits there, and then they hear it from the employer side as well.
Good. I'm glad that that message is being reinforced. One of the things that's, different about being a CPA about some of the other avenues available is it is a license, and, there is continuing education, and it's a responsibility and also an honor to be able to do some of the things that they get to do to protect the public as they're serving. And, one of the things that we always talk about so much is, it's endless opportunities, no matter what industry that you might be able to have an interest in or want to pursue. You have an opportunity to be, connected or engaged in that in your work across your lifetime. So we are so grateful for some of your insights and your engagement. We're so thankful for all the things that you're doing on campus and with students, and just, having your perspective and your background, and having kids be able to tap into that as I shouldn't say kids, young adults really tap into that and understand, what your real life experience was, is so, so valuable. So we're very grateful, and thank you so much for your engagement and sharing with us.
Yes, it's my pleasure. I am definitely biased, but I think accounting is the path for everybody. And it's not for everybody, but as you mentioned, it's such a good base and just provides so many different opportunities available. And with the CPA as well, like you mentioned, just being able to serve the public, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So we just have a couple of announcements real quick I'm going to hit on before we wrap up today. Sorry, it's taking just a minute to update the slide, I believe. So wanted you to be able to read Professor Shulcross's article in today's CPA. It's a special report on desirable internships to successful campus talent acquisition. We have some other great stories in there about filling the accounting profession pipeline, the Great Resignation, some tax topics for 2022, and also kind of the modernization of SEC rules. So check that out if you haven't had a chance to check it out online yet. Just a reminder about our Career Center, particularly if we have any folks that are younger that are maybe considering a career in accounting or maybe making a move. As our Career Center is a great resource, and we want to remind all our employers that internship postings are always free on the Career Center, so please take advantage of that. And then lastly, we have a lot of great learning opportunities available for everyone. Our next professional issues update is November 16th. We are going to be talking about the pipeline on that as well. Our Texas Tax Quarterly is coming up with some replays and a new edition in January. And of course, we always have ethics available for our members free of charge as well. And then we're going to end the year with CPE Expo. So there's lots of great opportunities to engage, whether you want to attend in person. We'll be in 3 cities, in Houston, San Antonio, and Dallas. And then we also have virtual opportunities, whether it be a one-day federal tax focus or the accounting and auditing, tax, or professional development tracks. So make sure you check that out as well. So Professor Shulcross, I'll close with this. I understand that it's a pretty big weekend at Baylor, and our chapter ED, Rebecca, put this in the chat as well. I know it's homecoming weekend at Baylor, so wishing everyone the best and a great win against Kansas.
Yes, sick 'em Jayhawks, and I said that because we're playing the Kansas Jayhawks, so we want to sick them. But Also, I think it's the largest college parade in the nation, or at least it used to be. So if you want to come to Waco this weekend, Saturday morning, that's happening.
So fun. So hope everybody has a great time there. Thank you all for tuning in and joining us. We look forward to seeing you on another upcoming broadcast soon. Take care, everyone, and have a great weekend.